Hello? 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 Hey, can you guys hear me okay? Cool. My name's John Michael Boling. I'm with culturesport.tv. Also with me here is Jason and Joe, who started this with me a long time ago. About 5 years ago, I had the good fortune to be able to leave my job with severance and unemployment. And I was exhausted of making what I was working on at the time, which was like a social research network, kind of like a website. And before that, I was a video artist and internet artist. But I was sick and tired of doing this website, and I hadn't done any studio work in years. And I had some money saved up, so I decided to enroll myself in what I called MYU, which was Myself University. And essentially for 8 months, do nothing but wake up at 8 in the morning and take Blender tutorials. Hundreds and hundreds of Blender tutorials, thousands and thousands of hours, all the usual suspects in my head. And after about 6 months of working on Blender, just nonstop, 7 days a week, I went back to a bunch of film ideas that I'd had when I went to film school years before, and came back to this idea that I'd had when I was 15, which was about a chatbot that became self-aware and recruited an army of teenagers to take over the world. And I was looking at this, and I was like, well, this is going to be super expensive to make live action, and I've been using Blender every day. What about I try to figure out a style that I could exploit that would be easy enough to sort of make this series, if not all by myself, at least independently or with a low enough budget. So I spent about a month, I gave myself a month to kind of do fidelity tests, and was really happy with what I had, and decided to talk to my brother, who is a cameraman and does like filming on different things and does short films by himself independently, and was like, got this great idea. I want to make a pilot for an animated series. Can you give me, just invest a little money, just, a few $1,000s, and I'll get it. And he agreed. I moved from New York to a rural farm in Georgia with no internet, no cell phone, and told him, like, okay, I'll see you in 3 months. 4 years later, last Friday, I finished the episode along with these guys. So I'm sure you guys are aware. But had I not been so naive, I never would have gone down there in the first place. We didn't stay at the farm the whole time. We were there for about the first year. And we're premiering it this evening after the fest, after the Suzanne Awards. So I hope if you guys come and see it, you'll see it. And if you guys have opinions about it, come find me or Joe or Jason, and say hey to us or hit us in the face or whatever you want to do. So we're an independent production. We've never had more than 6 months of runway. Terrible businessman. But we've stayed alive this long, and what I wanted to talk to you guys about today was basically the method with which we've used to remain independent and continue to develop our series, and be able to eat food all the time. So I'm not going to show you the full episode because we're saving that for tonight, but to give you guys some context, I'm going to start with just a little sizzle reel that gives you a sense of our kind of house style, because what we've done in effect is essentially create a fictional universe with a set of characters and a house style, and we've collaborated with different brands and musicians, and essentially licensed or leased or done, collaborations that use our house style with their thing, and allowed us to, get paid, also to continue to develop and iterate on our assets, and continue to survive so that we could finish this episode. So here's the kind of a taste of what we do. So that's kind of a representative sort of smattering of things that we've done, a few clips from old versions of the episode, just different collaborations, but I just wanted to give you guys a sense of sort of the state of where kind of our specific NPR style is. Just to note, everything we do is in Blender. We use After Effects for some compositing and Photoshops for textures, but pretty much 99% is done in Blender. Here we are at this farm. We're spending, a year and a half. Also, we're novices. Like 5 years ago, none of us had ever touched Blender or any other 3D software. I mean, I dabbled in Rhino like 10 years ago for like a minute, but for nothing real. So here we are, the first year and a half. We're basically just, mindlessly going through, not mindlessly, but going through tutorials. You guys know how that is. Just all the hours in the headphones, developing the style. Working on building all of our assets, starting to develop these characters. We don't know where it's going to go. The months are dragging on. Like it's always been, we're going to finish this thing in 2 months, or we're going to do, 2 more months for the last 4 years. But so we're sitting there. We don't really, we're in Georgia at the time. Our cost of living is really cheap, so we don't have to make a whole lot of money, but we also have our side sort of a young 3D firm, so we also don't have a whole lot of repeat business or customers or things like that. I came from a background in the art world. I used to do video art and internet art. I also did some advertising consulting, so I had some contacts with people, mostly like New York brands, nothing huge. And we were putting stuff out on our Instagram. And we were contacted by the creative director for this really great fashion label in New York called Telfar. And Telfar is just a really, they are also an independent label. They won the CFDA award last year, so they're getting bigger now, but they're kind of known for their just really interesting and kind of off-the-wall fashion campaigns. And the main designer for Telfar, whose name is Telfar, is this really kind of outrageous, amazing person. And so they approached us about doing a campaign film for their Spring/Summer 2016 line. They're we worked directly with them, but it was basically we could kind of do whatever we wanted. So that line, I think, had 42 pieces in it. And Telfar is such a character that we decided, how about we, and this was over the course of months and months of a creative process with them back and forth. But we were okay, we want to do this thing called, we were calling it metafictional advertising, where Telfar exists in the world of culture sport. He is a character. And so in the billboards in culture sport are Telfar ads. And even though in this world in New York or in our world, he's not a huge designer in culture sport, he's American Eagle, Halster, all this stuff, Gap, So let's do a Gap ad for Telfar. And let's have him be all the models. So we created a culture sport version of Telfar, and then we made 42 sort of mutant variants of him, of, varying gender and skin tone, and Jason built out the entire line. And we did this campaign film, which is pretty funny. If you could turn the volume up a little bit. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think you could pay any of us to open that blend file again. That at the end of it was probably the slowest blend file we've ever had to work with. But we learned so much with that. I mean, that was the first time we'd had, multiple, hundreds of lights, insane camera action. Just the animation's pretty simple, but the pose work I think is really, really good. It was also just, figuring out how to light that many characters in the style that we have. It's iterated a bit since then, but that's collaborations like this, and I'll show you a few more, are how we sort of, both afforded to, continue to stay an independent studio, but also push the boundaries on our house style. Shortly after this, or right at the end of this, we were contacted by a Dutch arts organization called Showroom Mama that is based in Rotterdam. And they had known, or they had been familiar with some of my older work, and had been put into contact, or had found out about Culture Sport, and asked us to do an exhibition of Culture Sport in Rotterdam. Now I don't have a clip. I'm just to let you know the chronology of where we're going. The Rotterdam '95 episode, which we're showing tonight, started right after this, and took 3.5 years. But Showroom Mama came to us. They wanted to do an exhibition. I, wasn't really comfortable doing something in the art context because I'd kind of retired as a fine artist, and wasn't really super interested in it at first. But they were very persistent, and they were just really cool people. And they were like, "Well, we can, get a budget." And I was like, "Okay, well, let's let's talk." And rather than just do print out high-res stills and put them on the wall. That felt really boring to me, so we started work on Rotterdam '95, which is the episode. But basically, I was like, why don't we tell a story in the Culture Sport universe? Let's do some research on Rotterdam. Let's pick an interesting time. Let's find out where our villains are. Let's find out where our heroes are. And let's just do kind of trans-historical fiction based in Rotterdam, which is what we ended up doing. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end because I'm going to show a little clip, but just to let you know, that's where that started. I'm going to show another project that happened, which was a collaboration we did for Kinzo, which is another fashion label. For whatever reason, we do a lot of work for fashion companies. I don't know if it's based in New York or if they just like weird stuff. It's fun working for them because they'll kind of let you do whatever you want. So for Kinzo, we did something for their spring-summer accessories line. And this was an opportunity for us to kind of do something a little different, but also use some of our actual characters that we had been developing for Rotterdam '95 in the product. So this is sort of the first use of one of our actual characters that's in the show that you'll see later. We used them for the tutorial video. They wanted us to build an interactive game that would make people want to buy bags, which is kind of a strange assignment anyway, and making a full-fledged game was kind of out of the scope of the project in the first place. But we basically ended up making, we're like, okay, we'll just make you a rhythm sequencer, like a 16-step sequencer, and we'll make, I worked with a programmer friend of mine, and we'll just model and animate the collection. So we were able to use characters that we developed for Rotterdam '95 in the tutorial video, which I'll show you the tutorial video right now. So yeah, that was the tutorial video. We got to use some of our characters, and I'll just have Joe pull up the website because it's actually a pretty neat little thing. So this is the website when you come to it. Essentially, all of this is, designed in Blender. I mean, the programming was done in JavaScript, but it was sort of making an interactive site and treating each bag like an instrument. I don't know if you've ever used a 16-step sequencer, but in the bottom left, Joe's sort of programming a beat. Videos aren't working up there, but they would play sort of different feeds of it. But give a round of applause for Joe for musicianing. So if you'll switch back to, I'm just going to kind of speed through these a little bit just so, hold on. We're still making Rotterdam 95 throughout this. We've premiered a very, very early version in Rotterdam, but it was like totally different than what we're showing, like insanely different from what we're showing. We'd done some things with the exhibition, but of course, here we go. We're, out of money again, so here comes another client that we're, okay, let's do something really cool. Let's really, at this point, the three of us had been working really hard. We'd had probably 3 years experience in Blender. We had another guy, Greg, who was doing animation, and we're like, okay, we're sci-fi futuristic, let's just throw it all out there. Mac Cosmetics wants to do something for AW18 Fashion Week, let's just give them the most futuristic thing we can, these videos for each city, and we presented this to the creative team, they loved it, So their creative team loved it. Unfortunately, they, on their end, had a huge miscommunication with their chief creative officer, who, when he saw this, was like, what is this? And it never ran. We ended up doing something way simpler. I just thought it was funny. What's we have after this? 5? What's that? Tech Pack. Okay. Okay, so we're still, this is a year after the last project, we're still working on Rotterdam 95. Every chance we get, whenever we do a client work, we work on this for a few months, and then, okay, we've got a few months, let's go back, let's remake it again. Every time, just this opening up the same blend files, trying to rework scenes we did years before, trying to make it better, trying to get new versions. At this point, I think we did 5 iterations, so what we're seeing is the 5th and final version tonight. So we're still working on that, and we did a new version at the end of last year, and at the beginning of this year, we did the second to last version of it, and then ran out of money. Luckily, Nike called, and they said, we love your Instagram. We're doing this campaign for Tech Pack, which is their sportswear line, and we need to have, it's not going to be all animation. It can't be all animation. We have to have like athletes and things in this thing. So this was our first chance to both be on set and creative direct and help shoot and set design and kind of build the world of this advertising campaign, but also integrate our stuff with live action footage. So that was an interesting challenge, and yeah, we learned a whole lot. It was also ended up getting all the footage back and realizing like most of the motion trackers and tracking markers were out of focus. So it was like Jason spending like nights up all night, basically manually rotoscoping almost every single frame. But it worked. A lot of the trackers did work. It wasn't like totally lost, but it wasn't. We didn't come back because we'd been doing tests with like iPhone footage and stuff. Like around, Joe's having to like run trackers on the dirtiest, nastiest video footage of all time, and we're like, we're gonna come back with this pro-looking stuff. It's gonna be like a snap, and it's like, wasn't a snap. But that allowed us to then spend the next 4 months, which has been the last 4 months for us, to finally finish what is our pride and joy, what we've been working for this whole time. Because while we have done collaborations with brand and advertising work to stay alive and to push the limits of our style, that's not what we got into this for. That's not what we want to be doing full time. It's fun, but it's also, as you guys know, super expensive and time intensive to make animations. So at the end of it, we've been able to come out of this with a really, an episode of TV that we're really proud of. We've got pitch materials. We've got a pilot script for the next episode. We've got a pitch Bible for the next season. We had an agent. We lost an agent. But we've got a meeting with Netflix in a few weeks, so cross your fingers, wish us luck. But I'll sort of circle back to talk about Rotterdam 95, which we'll be showing tonight, and I'll show the first 2 minutes of here. But basically, like I was saying earlier, we wanted it to be something interesting, something different. We looked at Rotterdam as a city. We realized that in the early 90s, hardcore techno was invented in Rotterdam. They called it Haber music. Super fast beat, very, very interesting style of dance. And we went to Rotterdam. We were working with Showroom Mama. I cast in Rotterdam. I worked with Rotterdam, voice actors, a choreographer, so that we could match the style of Rotterdam, or the dancing style, a stylist who knew how the Haber kids dressed. We rebuilt, if you stay tonight, you'll see it, we rebuilt the sort of preeminent Haber club at the time, which was called Parksicht. Went and took photos of it, got an architectural rendering. We rebuilt it. We restaged like a night there. I went and met with one of the musicians that used to play in that club. And he, his Rotterdam Terror Corps is the name of their group. And I went and talked to him, got him to make a new track in the style of 95, which is featured in the episode you'll see tonight. Yeah, we're just exhausted, but really, really proud of it. And just to give you a taste, this is the first 2 minutes of the episode. The episode is partially in Dutch, partially in English. So this is one of the Dutch sections, so it's got subtitles. But yeah.
From the moment we are born, the world
is trying to destroy us.
In this fight, the most powerful weapon we have
the only weapon
is our technology.
Technology.
With it, we have fought beasts,
cured diseases,
Defended our homes from the elements.
Here in the Netherlands, you have wrested
millions of acres of land from the sea.
But now the sea
is fighting back.
the ocean is rising.
The ocean is rising.
Our technology must rise to meet it.
If the Dutch are going to survive,
You must invent new weapons.
New defenses.
You must push past the possible.
In het nieuws vandaag, het verkeer op de A13.
Wat denk je? Nu 2 en dan later nog eentje? Of juist nu eentje voor als we aankomen en eentje als de skulde minion doen?
Voorzichtig, man. Straks ben je te high om Johanna te herkennen.
Komt zij ook?
Heb ik ook maar gehoord.
Oh. In dat geval neem ik nu een halve.
En verstoren, daarmee ernstig de nachtrust in de buurt.
Ton,
Nee, je moet er eentje bewaren voor als zij wil.
Ton, kijk nou.
Deze gabbermuziek neemt het hele land over, maar is geboren in Rotterdam.
Huh?
Dit is Parkzicht.
Parkzicht!
In deze club luisteren zij hardcore dansmuziek met een hele snelle beat. Pardon,
Dat is Danny.
Ik dacht dat hij dat verzonnen had.
wat trekt u nu zo aan in deze muziek?
Nou, het is snel, leuk en je kan er lekker vanuit je plaat gaan.
En gebruikt u dan ook drugs?
Nee, nooit.
Hij is higher als de Euromast.
Gebruikt u dan ook drugs?
De gemeenteraad heeft meerdere pogingen gedaan om Parkzicht te sluiten, maar tot nu toe zonder succes.
Boe.
In ander nieuws.
Once my software is running on the Erasmus, we'll be able to model ocean currents and wind patterns. We'll know the ocean better than it knows itself. We'll put up a new plaque to tell the world. Hierhan Oforati, de Wind, de Maan, en Peter Joost.
Bla bla bla.
All right, well, that's all the time I have. If Jason and Joel stand up, if you guys have any questions, come to any of us three. Yeah, so happy to be here, y'all. Thanks.